Faith over fear. I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. So, we're going to talk about faith and fear today and the relationship between the two because sometimes faith is seemed as like is perceived as like this silly sort of throwaway for ignorant and vulnerable people or people who are subjected to control of others. And it can also be seen as a superpower in the hands of the right person. So, fear is something that we allow to control our lives, we allow to control our reality, to stop us from our full potential. So, today we're going to examine all of that and understand what do we really believe? Because we put our faith into things all of the time. And whatever we're putting our faith into is directly impacting our reality in an empowering or a disempowering way. So until we can access something beyond the five senses and that perception of the world through our five senses, then we're going to continue to stunt our perception of the world and our own human potential. So thank you for joining me today. Let's look at fear first, okay? So fear, by definition, let me read this to you, is a very unpleasant, very unpleasant, or disturbing feeling caused by the presence of imminence or danger, or of by the presence or imminence of danger. It's like it's definitely going to happen, or we have faith it's going to happen, which is kind of the irony there, right? So it is the presence or the fear of danger. All right. And this is something that is usually out of our control. We fear what's out of our control. We also fear what we are accountable for, what we can control sometimes as well. But in this time of great uncertainty that all of us are moving through, there's a heightened sense of fear, a heightened sense of uncomfortability with relationships, with our own health and well-being. And if we look at a macrocosmic view of this whole situation, we're moving from, and don't let this lose you because this has a very practically applicable message, we're moving from what's called the Piscean age, which is about a 2,000 year age, into a new age, which we hear about, the age of Aquarius. Those of you who know the musical Hair, Age of Aquarius, right? This isn't just a fun song. This is actually a shift in consciousness, a shift in vibrational frequency, which we can measure and that we are seeing happen, unravel right before our eyes. So what is this? What's this difference? And what does this have to do with faith versus fear? The Piscean age, or the themes of these last 2,000 years, are related to hierarchy, putting our faith, putting our trust in systems, in leadership, in belief, in fundamentals that help to influence our lives in a certain way. And what's great about that, when we are able to trust an authoritative figure or a system, we benefit because we don't have to worry about our own accountability as much. We can say, oh, well, this is what the authority says, and so that is how I'm going to conduct myself ethically, eat appropriately or in a healthy way, or subscribe to a certain indoctrination as far as our medical systems, our educational systems, our monetary systems, our government systems. We look at this age of Pisces and moving into Aquarian, from systems that we put our faith into to now a whole age where we are questioning these systems, we're questioning these authorities, and we're having to turn internally and to also tap into these three upper chakras, and we're going to talk about chakras today, that help us perceive the world more accurately, somewhere beyond just our five senses, what we see, what we smell, what we touch, what we taste, and what we hear. Okay, and until we do that, we're cutting ourselves off from seeing the big picture. All right, so let's go into this a little bit more. So we're seeing these systems that are a little bit, or we're not a little bit, we're seeing them corrupted by political agendas, greed, control, like their ego-driven God complex of needing to have special interests and the subscription of the people, of the collective, to control. And whether you agree with one side of the political party or another, this is still applicable to every single one of us because it's impacting us on a broad scale and a very personal scale. So as we move from this Piscean age to this Aquarian age, what many of us don't realize is that we're also moving from a third to a fourth chakra consciousness. Now, what does that mean for those of you who are like, what chakras? You just lost me. A third chakra develops from the time we're about 8 to 12 years old, like right into junior high years, that kind of time right there, where we are learning about identity, we're learning about responsibility, we're learning about our ego, what we can control, what we can't control. Feeling ostracized, left out of the equation, right? We're moving from that time where we develop that third chakra, egoic consciousness, into our heart center, which develops between about 12 to 15 years of age, into those early high school years when we begin to have our first crushes, when we get into our heart's wisdom of knowing the difference between true partnership and control. And we start to kind of explore that during those ages. So moving from a third to fourth chakra consciousness is moving from more of an egoic, separate consciousness to how we are interconnected, right? So we're not interdependent, interconnected, right? Interdependent is an okay thing as well, but when we think from the third chakra consciousness, it's more of a codependency that we want to watch out for. So as we move from that third chakra of wanting to control things, wanting to control others, or feeling we're being controlled from that 8 to 12-year-old mindset to the 12 to 15 of the heart chakra, we're learning how to be more interdependent on one another. In order to do that and keep our autonomy, we need to recognize that sovereignty in the other and in ourselves. So let's look into this. So a personal issue around this shift from third to fourth is a deference of power. We give our power away. We are relinquishing our own sovereignty, our self-respect, our free will. We're forfeiting that. And what we see collectively is this collective frenzy, this climax of a power grab, either by governmental institutions, religious institutions, educational systems, monetary systems, power grab, so that we know that when we're about to make a change, and you know this in your own life, when you're about to make a change, you go from the place of feeling the uncomfortability or the unworkability of what the old way of being is. And then it gets to a spike. It's kind of like, before you go to the doctor, sometimes it has to get really bad. And then you go, oh, okay, it's time. We usually see the spike in the dysfunctionality of whatever we're moving from right before we make the change. The breakdown has to come to a climax ahead right before we make the change. So this collective frenzy that we're feeling, it's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing. Trust. And that's where we are going to talk about faith in a second. But trust that this is all moving towards a good thing. It feels like hell right now. I know. I'm in it too, right? We're all in it. But what we're under the delusion of, that we're awakening from, is this third chakra delusion that everyone, right, our sense of control comes from wanting everybody to be on the same page, wanting everybody to kind of play this game the same way, to all take this or to not do that, right? We all want to get on the same page, and we're like, once we do that, we can return to normal, or we can move forward, or we can graduate into a new reality, or whatever it is. But that's delusional. And I hate to tell you that, but it's delusional. If you are waiting for everybody to get on the same page in your family, in your friends, among your circles, in the world, in your city, in your town, in your political opinions or your religious affiliation, your belief system, you're setting yourself up for misery, because separateness is a reality. And if we ignore our separateness, that third chakra, the egoic separateness, that is not a bad thing. It's just a reality of being human. We're all connected, right? We do feel that, right? We feel that connection with one another. And then we have this very discordant separateness that is coexisting with that oneness. So we have this feeling of interconnectivity. And then we also have a very real existence of being separate from one another. So if we delude ourselves to thinking that everybody's going to conform, and we'll talk about the archetype of the conformer next, then we're going to be in this addictive trap of wanting to be in our comfort zone, of thinking that we are our identity, or that we're right and others are wrong, we're supreme and others are inferior. We get a false sense of authority out of that, and a false sense of control. super dangerous and super uncomfortable and only going to lead to more suffering for us and for our collective. So the danger here is denying sovereignty, which really is denying our own accountability. You know, with freedom comes responsibility. We know that. With sovereignty, we all want self-respect. We all want freedom to do what we want to do. But what comes with that is an absolute essential accountability, to be accountable for ourselves. All right. Rather than glorifying oneness, we need to honor that our separateness is as important, because in that we're able to create. We're able to create our own reality, our own path. Think of that time when you were 8 to 12 and into 12 to 15 years of age, when you're graduating from the third to the fourth chakra consciousness, or developing that. We are moving from that desire for conformity to the honoring of sovereignty. Okay, so the archetype here that we're working with is the archetype of the conformer. Oof. This is in our lives, and we certainly know it's in our lives during that age. You couldn't pay me enough to go back to that age of junior high, right? How about you, right? So at that time, what we're doing is we're moving into this desire to be accepted. That's the trap of the conformer. So what do we get when we conform to something? What do we get? We get instant peace, right? Okay, we're conformed. We get instant peace of like acceptance, instant acceptance. It's not really the inner peace, though, that we're looking for. And we have lasting servitude. Lasting servitude. So initially, we get that, oh, everything's okay. Everybody stopped arguing. Okay, I'm on the same page with them. We get that false sense of acceptance, false sense of love, and we get lasting servitude. So we forfeited our own self, our own identity, our sense of who we are, maybe our ethics as well. We throw that in with the desire for acceptance and the avoidance of ostracization, okay? So we can have this in our personal relationships. We see this happening on the world stage. So now let's look at faith, okay? Faith is seen as either silly or a superpower, typically. By those who get what faith is and the power of faith, they know it's a superpower. The most successful people in this world use faith every single day, okay? Those who don't use faith or see it as silly are cutting themselves off from their own potential, their own human potential, and also just the extraordinary aspect of our ability to create. So let's get into this with the upper chakras, all right? So those who understand it as a superpower, it's a tool for creation of reality. So what receives this belief? Like when we put our faith into something, whatever receives that belief or that faith, it shapes every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our lives. Think about it. What do you put your faith into? What do you put your faith into as real? I know when I was 24 years old, I remember it as clear as yesterday, because it was just a few years ago, that when I was 24 years old, I was having a conversation over the phone with my big sis, and she's 9 years older than I am. We have very different lives, very different work, very different paths. And at that time, I was only 24 and she was 33. She said, you know, when are you going to join the real world, Anne-Margaret? And I remember this so clearly and thinking, I was at the time, I was recording my first album of original music, and I was also teaching yoga. And she had gone the path of becoming an attorney. And she said, when are you going to join the real world? And I just thought to myself, I didn't answer, but I thought to myself, my first thought was, I don't want to join your real world. And the choice that we have when we move through our adulthood and as we enter into our early 20s is, what are we subscribing to? Are we subscribing to somebody else's reality? Are we putting our faith into that is the path I should take? Or are we courageous enough to go our own way? That is where freedom really lives, is in being able to check in with ourselves and say, is this right for me? Is this right for me? And so when we ask what is real, it's whatever we're putting our faith into. And that's not wrong for her, not wrong for me, not wrong for you versus somebody else who tells you that you shouldn't be doing something else. You have to check in and be able to check with what's right for you. So let's look at faith definitions. All right, this is fascinating. I found when I looked this up, definition for accessing the upper chakras, right? We're going to talk about that. Is the definition of faith. First definition is this: the assent of the mind, the acceptance of the mind to the truth of a proposition or statement, right? The accepting of something for which there is not complete evidence. All right, complete evidence. Now, where do we get evidence? What define evidence? Is it our five senses that we find evidence from? Now we are in an age for electromagnetism where we're able to measure energy, whether we're able to study the energy of our bodies and our minds through electromagnetic testing, EKGs, right? Sensing our feeling body and how to understand how our emotions are speaking to us about what is real, what's not real. And what's fascinating is that we can't deny quantum physics, which teaches us that our separateness, like our actual separateness of the observer, my perception of something changes that very thing. So my perception changes the reality that I'm experiencing. All right, the observer changes everything. If you don't know about it, quantum physics is so fascinating and affirms that we're all having our own existence, our own reality, our own moving through a different reality than your neighbor, your sister, your friend, right? Your whomever else it is, your parent, right? So denial of the sixth chakra, of the sixth chakra of intuition, our filters, and just reverting to the seventh. We see that a lot of times in chakra readings, that you'll get like a vertical reading, which is not wanting to be in your own intuition and just throwing it all up to the seventh chakra, which is our connection to faith, our connection to surrendering to God, or collaborative relatedness with others, or co-creative energy. And the second definition of faith, it defines this very thing, which says firm belief based on confidence in the authority and veracity of another, rather than one's own knowledge, reason, or judgment, earnest and trustful confidence, to have faith in the testimony of someone else, okay? So if we forget our own sixth chakra, if we forget our own intuition, our own unique filters even that we're listening through, and that'll be in the fifth in a second, I'm kind of jumping around here, we will just defer to authority figures. We'll just defer to some other human authority, human leader, for our version of reality. How can we not defer just to that, but listen to it, receive it, and have it filter through our own intuition? Because if we're not listening to our own intuition, we are just living in accordance to somebody else's reality, which is skewed. Nobody's God walking around here in earthly form, right? We are all human. We are all flawed. We are only limited. We are all limited by our perception of our reality. So if you're listening to somebody else like they're God, you're listening to me right now like I know everything. I don't. I only have my perception of things, as do you. Does that mean we can't receive the wisdom of each other? No. But if we're not pulling it through our own intuition, then we might be indoctrinated into some sort of cultish, overly faith-driven perception of reality. Okay? That can be dangerous. So also when we think about what is spiritual perception? Because there is another definition of faith that says, in a more restricted or false sense, in theology, spiritual perception of the invisible objects of religious veneration or reverence, like what you're worshiping or you're giving your reverence to, is a belief founded on spiritual perception. Okay, here's where it gets sticky. It's like, well, it's just spiritual perception. What is that? It's just fluff. It's just silly. But we're missing, when we're doing that, we're just reading through our five senses, and we're missing the power of our intuition, our power to create through our listening, which is fifth chakra, and also our power to receive or co-create through the seventh chakra. We're missing the power of faith. So what do we put our faith into? Let's look at this real quick. We put our faith into systems, like I said, leaders, political figures. We put our faith into religious leaders. We put our faith into systems, our education, other drivers on the road that they're going to stay in their lane. We put faith into them. We put faith into our spouses. We put faith into ourselves sometimes, not always. And we also put faith into our kids. What do we say to kids when they're not sure that they can do something? You can do it. You can do it. I know. I have faith in you. What does that do for a child? You are shifting your listening of the child by saying, I have faith in you. You're shifting their listening of themselves. Oh, that person has faith in me. Maybe I can have faith in myself. And then they receive a boost of confidence that quite possibly might have them achieve their goal so much faster. Right? This is proven through so many different experiments out there too. All right. Let me talk about this here when we get into the sixth chakra. So until we can access the practical and provable senses of the upper chakras, not just our five senses of the lower five, but the upper five, the upper three. The fifth is also included in the upper three because it has a dual function. It has that listening, sense of listening, but it's also creating through our listening as well. Not just how we're listening or speaking into the world, but how we're listening and creating a perception. All right. So we have the listening, we've got our filters, how we are perceiving the world, how we're seeing the world through what we believe, and then also how we're receiving the help of another from God and co-creativeness. Okay. So the autopilot, we go on autopilot all the time when we're eating or when we're driving, even in our marriage. And if we go on autopilot, we forfeit intentionality. So without these upper three chakras, we forfeit our intentionality. So looking at the fifth chakra, our listening creates reality. Think about if you walked into a room and you know that the person in there thinks of you like you are, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, are you going to be very articulate at all? No, right? Because you're thinking, oh my gosh, this person thinks I'm dumb. Person has this very limited listening of me. And then think about you walk into that same room and there's somebody there who thinks that you're incredible, who really supports you, who gets you, who is your biggest cheerleader. You're going to be so articulate. You're going to be able to be so insightful because of their listening of you and allowing yourself to have that same listening of yourself. That's the fifth chakra and the power of listening. All right, let's go to the sixth chakra. Intuition and filter creates reality. So as this listening creates reality and a certain freedom, our perception also creates reality. Our filters, are we seeing that the world is going to hell and that everybody is just crumbling and that the world is not a safe place? That's a filter that's going to create a certain reality. If you put your faith into a filter that all is unfolding for my greatest good, all this is for me, not happening to me, but for me, you're going to see some insights. You're going to receive blessings. I just combined blessing and lesson. You're going to receive the blessings and the lessons that are on your way. But if you're cutting yourself off by thinking that everything is just horrible and wrong and just scary, you're not going to be able to see clearly with this, okay? And then the seventh chakra, and before I go there, there's even a study that was done by a doctor, let me look at this word, name, Biasiotto, I think it's Biasiotto, at the University of Chicago. He did this fascinating study where he took this group of basketball players at the University of Chicago, split them up into three different groups. The first group, all right, to see if they could improve their free throws. You shoot the basket from that line, right? The first group, the first third, practiced their free throws for an hour every day. The second group didn't touch a basketball, but they were visualizing themselves for an hour a day, making those shots, okay? So they just sat still, closed their eyes, and used the power of their sixth chakra to visualize themselves into that reality. Okay, belief system. They started believing it through powerful visualization. The third group didn't do anything. They didn't touch a basketball. They didn't visualize. They just took that time off. Okay, so what happened? What do you think happened? The first group, they improved. They improved by 24%. They shot 24% more free throws after they did that, after they practiced an hour a day. The second group improved by 23%, just 1% short of that group that practiced an hour a day, just from visualization. The third group, there was no change, as you can imagine. But that second group, they had 23% of an improvement around their skill just by visualizing. Now, this is not to say don't touch a basketball again if you're trying to get better at basketball. What if you shot the free throws for an hour every day and you visualized? How much more powerful would you be and how much more successful at whatever it is that you want to do? That's the power of the sixth chakra, all right? And the seventh chakra is the ability to co-create with others. The ability to recognize that others might have some wisdom for you to listen to. Tapping into receiving wisdom or receiving drop-ins or downloads from God, from the universe, from inspiration, whatever you believe in that department. We are opening the crown chakra to co-creative energy that we can't deny exists in the world. That is that oneness. We're not glorifying it and forfeiting our own perception of our own reality, our intuition, our separateness, but we are also inviting in the wisdom of that oneness. Okay? So faith, what are we putting our faith into? Are we putting our faith into our own limited weakness? Are we putting it in fear? Or are we putting it in the possibility of greatness, our potential, our sovereignty, our free will, our ability to figure it out, our ability to grow, our ability to find more connection with one another? So thank you so much for joining me today. You can use this video however you choose and share it with anybody that you think could benefit from this message. But remember, be very, very selective about what you're putting your faith into. And that faith shapes your belief system, and then that belief system determines your reality. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep raising the vibration. All right, bye, everybody.